Hello everyone, welcome to Chess Visor. Let's check this beautiful game played between Ramesh Babu, Praggnanandhaa and Gukesh from the Prague Chess Festival, and it was round number 7. Without much delay, let's get started. With the white pieces, Prag starts the game with his one of the favorites opening, that is 1 e4, and he goes for the Italian opening. The variation wise we are seeing the classical Giacomo pawn to d6, pawn to c3, covering the d4 square. It's actually a multi-purpose move because you cover d4 and also you prepare the move d4, and also when the bishop arrives on g4 you don't care about it because there is no knight e4, and in future rook e1 and then knight b d2 and then knight g3 pawn h3 and then you kick the bishop away. So this is the typical plan of the relopers as well as the Italian opening. So let's see. The game continues with a6, paving the way for the bishop's diagonal, and then okay, whenever the pawn comes to d4, there is no tempo on the bishop. So rook e1, bishop a7, knight b d2, and then castles. So in this position, Prag plays knight to f1. This was an interesting choice by him because so here the most common way to play this position is to bring the bishop back to b3 so that the bishop pair can be saved. But this is the moment you could save the bishop. But in this game, he played knight f1. And now Gukesh chases the bishop. So bishop b3 and then takes the bishop, a takes b3, pawn to h6, just restricting the bishop. And the bishop can always go to e3 if he wants to go. So knight to g3 and then rook e8, pawn to h3, pawn to b5. So here he is threatening to play something like pawn to b4, so to ruin the pawn structure maybe. So he himself plays pawn to b4. And also the here Gukesh plays bishop to b7. This is most important, or the important strategic move in this position. It's because if you do not play the bishop to b7 in this diagonal, so your a pawn is going to be weak, and since this file is already a semi-open file, it can be used by the Prague to easily target the a pawn. And most importantly, the bishop is going to go to b6 so that the rook won't have this little outpost on a5. So for that purpose, you have to play bishop e3 and then trade the dark square bishop, and then you're gonna go rook a5 and then like queen b3, queen a3, or even directly rook a1 is a fine way to go. So it's a typical plan. So bishop b7 is a kind of forced move in the long run. So knight to h2. So here Prag could have played a knight to f5 directly. In that case, pawn to d5, e into d5, and then there is a problem on e5 maybe. But in the game, he plays knight h2, which allows Gukesh to immediately press forward with the move pawn to d5. And here Prag plays queen f3, just vacating the d1 square for the one of the rooks. Rook e6, preparing to go to the I think rook g6 maybe an idea, or rook f6 could be an idea. So here he plays knight f5 now. So the knight sits at a beautiful square on f5 square. So you don't want to, you cannot even kick the knight. That's the problem with this knight's position. So king h7. However, so here if you look at the position carefully, the bishops are actually looking stronger in these diagonals. So combining with this rook move such as rook to g6 would be deadly combination to attack the king. So let's see how the game progresses. Queen g3 immediately threatens mate in 1. Knight to e8 guards that. Again, it's kind of a multi-purpose move. So you want to pave the way for the rook, and also once this, the center tension relieved, then the bishop is going to see the rest of the board, and that's a problem for white. Let's see how he handles. So he goes knight to g4 to stop, or to just cover the g6 square. But in this position, Gukesh did not play rook to g6 because the pawn is hanging. So he plays d into e4 first, and then d into e4, and then he comes with the knight to d6. So putting pressure in the center again. And here the e5 is under attack twice, and Prag simply captures it. The problem with this move is that it's not a problem, and here Gukesh is forced to capture on f5 because there is mate. You cannot move the the d6 knight because of the mate. So you have to capture that. So knight takes f5 and then e takes f5, threatening the rook. Rook goes to f6. So this is a kind of a weak pawn. So let's see how he can hold or not. So bishop e3 challenges the strongest bishop on the post. Especially the light square bishops are already off the board. So you have to exchange one of the bishops. So it's kind of forced again. So bishop into e3, queen into e3. And then he goes for rook takes f5. and he finally brings rook a d1. If you look at the position and if you evaluate it carefully, white is slightly better. It's because of their in a position of the major pieces, which is occupying the only open two files. So he plays queen f6, forming this little battery thing and creating some problem on the f file. And here there are two moves which is kind of tempted to play. That is knight to d7, immediately going and attacking the queen, and also rook to d7. So in this position, if you play knight to d6, then queen g6 would be a strong move here. And here f3 is losing here on the spot because of rook takes f3 followed by bishop f3. So in this position, you have to play something like pawn to g4, and you don't want to do that because of the strongest bishop which is sitting on the b7 square. So going back in this position, if you consider rook to d7, which is also a tempting move to play in this position, and in this case you can pin down the knight and you are in trouble now. So you have to play pawn f4 and then rook into f4, queen d3 check. You have to unpin yourself, king to g8 and then rook e3. So after rook e3, you must play rook takes e5 is a blunder. So you must play bishop e4 here, and then the game continues. So like this. So if you look at the position at the end result, black has a pawn up and he is slightly better. So going back in this position, that is why all these tempting moves were not attempted, because of this following threats and ideas. So he plays pawn f3, cutting off all the ideas with only one move. Pawn to h5, and then king to h2, bishop to c6, invites the knight to get exchanged. So he does that. So knight into c6, queen into c6, and then queen e7. And here, interesting way to play this position, king to g6, and it doesn't look like on a human move, but you could try that move. So king to g6, and one more move is that the main threat is that the rook is coming to the 7th rank. So how we can stop it? By playing to, or what is the threat? It is going to threaten the c7 pawn. So you could play rook to c8 or king to g6. But in the game, he played a5, which is kind of an inaccuracy or a mistake, because here after b into a5, rook into a5, and here Prague plays rook e5, forcing the rook exchange here. So he tries pawn to b4, but after all the transaction, he loses a pawn on b4 square. And if you if you look at the position again carefully, this is like a tricky ending, because this is a major piece ending. You could draw this game because of the exposed kings for both sides, especially for black, because he needs the draw because he is down a pawn now. Let's see how the game progresses. Rook e5 was played, and then queen f4 was played. So in this position, the better way for Gukesh to handle this, to play simply rook to f5, stopping queen to f4. This is very important, because going back to the game, after rook e5, he plays queen f4 and gains the valuable tempo. You might be thinking about queen to e6, that was actually played in the game, but the problem is now he can play this brilliant move, that is rook to d7. If you take my rook, I'm going to take yours, and I have a pawn up, and I'm going to win the game. So rook f5, and then he plays queen takes c7, and now he is 2 pawns down without any compensation. The king's position is little kind of weak, but it is manageable. But the problem is, the real problem is, white is having couple of pass pawns, and that is connected, and that's a clear winning for Prague. And I would like to highlight the time situation here, that is Prague is having 4 minutes 38 seconds in his clock, and Gukesh is having 4 minutes 26 seconds in his clock. Why I'm mentioning the time? It's because it is very crucial stage for both the players. Prague could win the game. Let's see how the game progressed. So in the game, he played queen e2, threatening to play rook g5, and then queen to g2 is a checkmate. So how to stop this? He tries rook e7 first, just to gain time on the queen, and then he plays queen to d2. The main threat is, as I mentioned, rook to g5, queen to g2, mate. So to stop this idea, he covers h4, g5 with the h4. The better move was to cover with the f4. There is a huge difference between these two moves, because in this move, you not only cover the g5 square from the rook, you also cut off the queen's diagonal, and also it is actually stopping rook g5. So both the things are you can achieve, because even if you take on a b2, rook takes f7, rook takes f7, and in the end you are losing the h pawn. That is the problem. But in the game, he played h4. Still, Prague is kind of winning the game. Let's see. Rook f4, queen e5, Rook takes h4 comes with the check, king g3, and then rook h1, queen to e4 check, and then king to h6, queen f4 check forces the queen trade. After king takes f4, he plays g5 check. This is the critical moment. They have reached the time control. This is like 43rd move. Both the players are having a enough time, like 30 minutes in Gukesh clock, and Prague is having 25 minutes in his clock. And in this position, you have only one move to win the game. If you want to find it, you can pause the video and try to find it. This is to activate the king, or make the king to contribute more. So for that, you have to play this move, that is king to f5. Why this is winning? Let's see. Rook h2, that is to target this one. So you play rook e2, just cover the the second rank, and then you push forward the b pawn. h4, there is no other way that black can progress. He can only try to do the counter attack on the king side. Let's say h4, pawn to f4, breaking the structure. h3, f into g5 check, king g7, and then rook e3, threatening the pawn. You can win the pawn in two ways, but you have to give up the b pawn. So let's see, rook takes g2, h into g2. This is one way. Otherwise, you can play this move, h into g2, and then rook g3, queens the pawn, and then you take, and then you win the b pawn. And the problem is, after all the transaction, white could play rook to pawn to c4, or king to e4. Both are winning move actually, because the king is kind of stuck in the king side, and this is like a completely winning position where the rook cannot stop the queening. And going back in this position, if you go the other way, this one still the same, but you have to play pawn to c4 in this position. Rook c2, rook h4, and then rook f2 check, king e5, activating the king. Rook c2, and then the game progresses. But of course, white is going to win the game without much problem. But in the game, what happened actually here, he played pawn king to g3. So instead of playing king to f5, he played king to g3, which is kind of a great miss by Prague. And here follow-up moves are very forcing, like pawn to f5. You advance the try to advance the majority and try to do something on the king side, and it could be like you may not be able to digest this, because white is having two pass pawns. How come white cannot win this game? Let's see. Rook e6 check, and then king g7, and then king f2, rook b1, rook e2, f4, rook d2, g4. So many shuffling moves would be there. There is no tactics, nothing, just the theories by the top level GMs. g3, h4, and then, oh my god, sorry about this. So g3 was 49th move, sorry. Pawn to h4, and then g into h4, g3 check is trying to create the passer here. King to g2, rook c1, and then king h3, rook h1 check, king g4, rook h2. Just trying some trick here. Of course, you cannot take the rook d1, rook into b2, you lose another pawn. King takes f4, and you gain one more. But the problem is, we have this pass pawn g2. You have to stop this. Rook g1, rook c2 was played, and then king to g4, king h6, pawn to f4, king g6, pawn c4, rook into c4. You lose the other pawn by giving up an g2 pawn. Rook c1. What is the problem in this position? Why white cannot make a progress here? It's because the king is well positioned in front of the pawns, and they are not connected pawns. Okay, they are weak pawns, so a couple of isolated pawns, and also the rook is completely active. Whenever the king try to go active, the rook is going to give checks, and that's how you make the draw. Let's see. h5 check, king h6, and then rook e2, rook g1 check, and then king f5, rook a1, rook to e8, rook a2, king g4, rook to g2 check. This is the problem. King f3, and you go again to the queen side. King rook e5, rook a1, rook b5, and then rook a2. Rook c5, rook a1, rook e5, rook a2, king g4, rook g2 check, and then king f5, rook f2, king e4, rook a2, king f3, rook a1. So there was some kind of repetition was happening, but then king to g4, rook g1 check, and then king f5, rook f1, rook e4. And here actually Prague is trying his best here, and Gukesh is putting a lot of effort to give the best defense by himself. So rook e4, rook a1, and then king f6, king takes h5 finally, because that was you could capture that pawn anytime, so he captures it now. So king takes h5, pawn to f5, trying to make the progress, but now comes the move rook a6 check. So rook e6 blocking the check, and then rook a7 just cut off the king's escape square so that you won't allow a valuable tempo because the pawn will progress again. So rook to d6, king h6, you just make the king move or the rook move on the 7th rank. King h5, rook e6, king h6, rook e5, king h5, rook e7. In this position, if you are thinking about again improving the king's position so that you can pave the way for the pawn, but the problem is you play king to g5. So after f6 check, king g6, it looks like you are making a progress, but the problem is I have, let's say, rook e3, you have to do something about or something with the rook, and then I can play this move, rook a6 check, and then you are losing the pawn. So going back in this position, he plays rook e7, and then rook a6 check, king g7, and then king g5. So f6, rook a6, and then rook e7 paving the way, but now he captures it. Rook e5 check, and then blacks it and takes, and you have the two kings staring at each other. So this is a draw. So after 91 moves, after a hard fight, and this was ended in a draw. Of course, Prague missed a couple of chances, and that was a very good chance. He could have won it, and yeah, so that's how the chess works. One has to make a mistake, and the other has to capitalize that. Let me know your ideas, thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and still, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel ChessWiser, please consider subscribing to the channel. As usual, this is ChessWiser, your wise choice to improve your chess.